Welcome, everyone. We're just going to give a few minutes for a minute or two for people to hop in, and then we'll get started.
Shall we get started?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Myra Snell, and I am a math professor at Los Medanos College and executive director of the California Acceleration Project. I want to welcome you to our fall webinar series, which is titled Teaching Matters for Equity. And this is the second webinar in that series. I want to give a few logistics right here at the beginning. We have a large number of registrants for this webinar, so we're not going to be using the chat. We're going to be using the Q&A function. If you're not familiar with the Q&A function, it is a button located at the bottom menu of your Zoom screen. And when you enter a question, it does not immediately appear. It appears when it is answered. And we will have written answers in addition to some questions our presenter will answer orally. The recording is being, the presentation is being recorded, and we will make sure that we send you that in addition to the study that we're talking about today and the resources that will be mentioned. If you do not receive an email from us, it's because your spam filter might be blocking us, and you can find everything that you are hearing today and the associated resources on the Acceleration Project website. And that's accelerationproject.org, and it's under publications. I'll probably have it up by midweek next week. If we don't get to all of your questions, the presenter has kindly agreed to share her contact information, so you will be able to follow up with her. All right, let's go to the first slide. And I wanted to just give us a quick overview of AB 1705 funding. And this fall, the California Acceleration Project's webinar series is designed to support colleges in making good use of their AB 1705 funding so that our colleges can achieve strong and equitable outcomes in our transfer level English and math classes. As you probably know, the legislature approved $64 million in one-time 3-year funding to support us in AB 1705 implementation, and the money was distributed to our colleges over the summer. There are 5 funding categories, including explicit mention of equity-focused professional development. What you see here on the slide is an excerpt from the memo from the Chancellor's Office about this funding, and I gave information there about how you can find this directly by searching. The excerpt here is the portion of the funding, how they have described the professional development funds. And as I read through these, I just feel these are fantastic ideas of helping us produce equitable outcomes. So today, our presentation is specifically designed to help you make good use of your AB 1705 funds. And I hope that the ideas presented here today will help us understand what we can do to create classrooms that motivate and support our students to learn. And I hope that you will leave with an understanding of why these strategies work and how we can help facilitate communities of practice in our departments that will improve student outcomes across the board. What we do as teachers matters, and it matters for equity. If you go to the next slide, which will be my last comments, in our webinar last week, this point was powerfully made, and I wanted to just reference it before we moved on into our new webinar today. Last week's webinar, which is available on our website under publications, investigated factors that explain student success in transfer level math. And this was a California Community College study, a very large study, that examined the association between passing a transfer level math course and the following factors: student demographics, prior academic preparation, high school the student attended, various course attributes, and who the student had as their instructor. The key findings of this amazing study were that math faculty are the most important factor in predicting a student's success in a transfer level math course, twice as important as the student's prior academic preparation. And in that study, there were specific instructional practices that their qualitative work had surfaced as reducing the racial disparities in transfer level math course outcomes for Black and Hispanic students. So I encourage you, if you were not there last week, to go to our website under publications, and you will see a link to the report, a brief, and the actual webinar. Now let's turn our attention to Kathy Emerson, who I am delighted to have with us today. She is the Director of Research for the Equity Accelerator. And we are going to hear more about her research, including research in our California Community College system and the resources that have potential to help us achieve stronger and more equitable outcomes for our students. Okay, Kathy, I'll hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Myra. As Myra mentioned, I'm Kathy Emerson, Equity Accelerator's Director of Research. And on behalf of our EA team and our project team, I just want to say I'm thrilled to be here. And I want to express my gratitude to the California Acceleration Project for inviting me to speak to you all. So today, as Myra mentioned, I'll be sharing EA's ongoing work and supporting faculty, including community college faculty, as they build cultures of growth in their classrooms. And so as part of this work, I'll share the results of a recent engagement that we had that was supported by CAP. And in this engagement, EA offered several professional development opportunities to faculty in your California Community College system to support them in building and fostering cultures of growth. And just to reiterate, because I know some folks kind of came in as we were moving, I just want to give a little bit of another reiteration of how the webinar is going to work. So for the webinar, I have Shahid Walker. She's a project manager at EA, and she's going to help manage this Q&A. So periodically in the talk, I'll have Shahid share a question or two from the audience. And then at the end, I'll set aside time to take more questions during a more live Q&A. So if you have any questions, you can just access that Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll do our best to address them. And if we don't get to your question, my contact information will be at the end of the presentation, and I'm happy to chat with anyone who wants to chat about any of the ideas here or any future opportunities to work together. So I'd like to go ahead and start this talk with a brief description of who we are at Equity Accelerator, including our mission as an organization, as well as the approach that we take to supporting faculty in creating and sustaining cultures of growth. At EA, our mission is institutional transformation. EA is the first focused research organization to harness research, practice, and policy to create more equitable learning and working environments. We work with culture creators like faculty, administrators, and staff to reshape institutions of higher education into true cultures of growth, where the norms, policies, and practices of an environment effectively support the success of all students, particularly those from structurally disadvantaged and historically excluded backgrounds. Our unique framework at EA is grounded in robust empirical evidence from fields like education, organizational behavior, and the social sciences, and we work across institutions of higher education to create, implement, and evaluate evidence-based tools and resources for faculty, administrators, and staff that we have found consistently improve students' experiences and outcomes. So to better situate us for today, I want to provide you with a roadmap for this presentation. So first, I'm going to talk about this idea of cultures of growth and contrast it to traditional notions of individual growth mindset. I'll then briefly walk us through some of the existing research from the social sciences, education, and organizational behavior to demonstrate the existence and impact of cultures of growth. I'll spend the bulk of my time describing our work with CAP and California Community College faculty, and I'll close with what I hope are some actionable next steps about how you can build cultures of growth in your classrooms and in your institutions. So let's begin. So I want to start by returning to the phrase that you've heard already multiple times in this talk, including in the title, which is cultures of growth. What do I mean when I say cultures of growth? Well, to answer that question, I'm going to start by turning to research that I'm sure many of you at this point are familiar with, And that's the work that has been done by Carol Dweck and colleagues on growth mindset. So according to Carol Dweck, people have a mindset, which refer to beliefs about the malleability of human characteristics. Traditionally, this research has put forth two different types of mindsets. People who endorse a fixed mindset believe that things like intelligence, athletic ability, and personality are fixed traits that can't be changed. Either you have it or you don't. You either have that intelligence or ability or you don't, and there's not much you can do to change it. So you can imagine that you're in a math class. And when faced with a difficult math problem, someone with a fixed mindset might say, I'm just not a math person. In contrast, people who endorse a growth mindset believe that things like intelligence, athletic ability, and personality are malleable qualities that can be developed and improved by effort, applying the right strategies, and seeking help. So when faced with that same difficult math task, someone with a growth mindset might say, I just haven't mastered math yet. So decades of research has demonstrated that students' mindsets can affect their motivation, persistence, engagement, and performance. Specifically, when students endorse strong growth mindset beliefs, we consistently see that they show high levels of motivation, heightened persistence in the face of challenges or setbacks, sustained engagement with academic learning, and ultimately better performance. Yet there are limits to this understanding and conceptualization of mindset. Conceptualizing and setting mindsets as being in the heads of students puts the onus on students to foster their own growth mindset to improve their outcomes. Instead, we argue that it is the case that some educational environments undermine students' growth mindset beliefs. They provide limited opportunities to improve with effort, little guidance in strategies they might apply, and minimal encouragement when seeking help. In other words, if students are not provided with the resources and supports that lead to learning and growth, then it's going to be very hard to sustain that belief that learning and growth are possible in those environments. More recent research, spearheaded by Mary Murphy, the CEO and founder of EA, has expanded our understanding of mindset to include not only personal mindsets, but mindset cultures. Mindset cultures refer to beliefs of powerful people in a setting, like teachers, professors, counselors, or administrators, about people's talents and abilities. So the work of Dr. Murphy and our colleagues has placed growth and fixed mindset cultures onto more of a continuum, as Carol Dweck originally intended. And so on this continuum, you have on the one hand more fixed, what we call cultures of genius, where the prevailing message is that talent or ability is a stable trait that cannot change much. And on the other side of this continuum, you have cultures of growth, where the prevailing message is that talent or ability is a potential that can be developed. And so the purpose of this continuum is to recognize that an organization's culture can and often does fall somewhere in between an extreme version of a culture of genius or a culture of growth, and can even move between these endpoints in different situations or over time. Mindset culture is expressed through what powerful people say and do, including norms, policies, practices, and interactions with students. And nearly 15 years of research has demonstrated that what faculty say and do, that is the mindset culture that they create, predicts how students perceive faculty mindset beliefs and the classroom's overall culture. So as I mentioned, mindset cultures are communicated in a variety of ways by a variety of powerful people, right? What's the shared denominator is that they're culture creators. And so anyone in a position of power can have an influence on an organization's mindset. However, today I'm going to focus specifically on the ways in which faculty create and communicate cultures of growth or genius in their classrooms. So imagine we have a professor speaking to their students. Sometimes faculty say something like this in their class: look to the left, look to the right. One of you won't be here at the end of the term. Or they might say, if you're not a science person, you should consider dropping this course. How are these words experienced by students? Our research finds that these kinds of culture of genius messages create concerns among students about their belonging, such as, do they think I or people like me belong here? This is especially likely to be the case for students from backgrounds who are underrepresented or negatively stereotyped in a particular field. Alternatively, an instructor might say, this course builds on material from Math 101. If you need to review those concepts, we can connect you to resources. Or, it is normal to be challenged by material at some point in the term. Please reach out for help. This type of culture of growth messaging communicates to students that their professor believes that all students can learn and grow as long as they're engaged in particular behaviors, such as seeking help and reviewing material as needed. So now that we have a basic idea of how a culture of growth or culture of genius might be communicated to students in the classroom, I want to explore what the research says about how these different messages impact students' outcomes. So in the next section of this presentation, I'm going to review a few slides conducted by EA researchers and their collaborators that have explored how mindset culture messages impact the experiences and outcomes of students. So in this first study, researchers examined the classroom experiences and outcomes of nearly 1,200 first and second year college students. These students were enrolled in more than 50 introductory STEM courses at 4 universities. And the study used an experience sampling method where researchers built an app and students were texted directly after class to gather data on their perceptions and experiences in the instructor's course. And so this allowed the research team to collect data from students in almost real time. And for this study, the central research question was, how do instructors' perceived mindset beliefs impact students' classroom experiences and outcomes in that class? So as I mentioned, the researchers, started with measuring students' perceptions of their instructors' mindset beliefs. And what they found was that when students perceived that their professor endorsed more fixed beliefs, they reported greater psychological vulnerability in that course. And so by that, I mean that they experienced a lower sense of belonging, greater concerns about being evaluated harshly or being viewed as an imposter when they struggle or make a mistake, as well as more negative affect, which includes things like anxiety and depression. This experience of psychological vulnerability, in turn, has a significant impact on students' course engagement and performance. When students experience heightened psychological vulnerability as a result of being in a culture of genius, they reported lower course engagement, like lower effort, lower attendance, and higher dropout intentions. They also reported less interest in STEM, both in that individual class and in the field more broadly. And finally, they demonstrated lower course performance in the professor's class. This study is one of several that exist to demonstrate how faculty's mindset can have a tremendous impact on students' classroom experience and their course outcomes. So in the next study I want to share with you, EA explored the extent to which cultures of growth and cultures of genius may be signaled specifically in community college classrooms. In this study, we had 109 math and English faculty at 9 California community colleges participate. We also had responses from over 1,000 students in transfer level math and English classes of those participating faculty. In this case, faculty self-reported their mindset about student abilities. And also, students provided ratings of their perceptions of faculty mindset, perceptions of faculty use of growth culture teaching practices, and also their classroom experience. And the central research question in this study was, to what extent are faculty mindset beliefs and use of growth culture teaching practices associated with students' perceptions of their instructors and their overall classroom experience? So when we assessed the self-reported mindset beliefs of California community college faculty that participated in our study and compared it to the perceptions of students, what did we find? So first, we can see in the bars that are presented for you, these dark blue bars, we found that faculty self-reported very high levels of growth mindset beliefs. You can see from these bars that faculty self-report on average over a 5 on a 6-point scale of agreement, in which higher scores indicate stronger endorsement of growth mindset beliefs. So what about students? How did they perceive the mindset beliefs of their instructors? So these light blue bars show students' perceptions of faculty mindset. And what we see here is that overall, students perceive weaker growth mindset or growth faculty mindset beliefs than faculty self-report. So you can see there's a little bit of a gap. Faculty are self-reporting stronger growth mindset beliefs than students are perceiving them to hold. So what might be the cause of this gap? How are students drawing inferences about faculty mindset beliefs? Well, one source of information that students may use to draw these inferences is faculty's use of growth culture teaching practices. These can include things like helping students cultivate positive attitudes about learning, discussing common mistakes with students before tests and exams, giving specific suggestions for how students can improve their work, or structuring engaging learning opportunities into the class. It can also include things like telling students you believe they are capable of reaching the high standard you have set for their work, as well as monitoring student progress. So in this study, students were asked to rate the extent to which their instructors engaged with these and other growth culture teaching practices. So in these results, I just want to reiterate, we're focusing only on students' perceptions. We're focusing on their perceptions of faculty mindset and their perceptions of faculty use of growth culture teaching practices. And I have two columns here because in the first column, I have correlations for math faculty, and in the second column, I have correlations for English faculty. So for those of you who may not feel super comfortable with interpreting correlations, I'm just going to explain it really briefly. The values represent the strength of the relationship between -1 and 1. And the further that a value is from 0, the stronger the relationship is. The sign, whether it's positive or negative, describes the direction of the relationship. So if a value is positive, it means that as one variable increases, so does the other. And if it's negative, it means that as one variable increases, the other one decreases. And we have asterisks here to indicate statistical significance for anyone who's curious. And so I've pulled a subsample of these correlations for illustrative purposes. I didn't want to have too bulky a slide, but the results were really consistent across the board. And what we found was that across nearly all practices, students' perceptions of faculty use of growth culture teaching practices were positively and strongly associated with their perceptions of faculty mindset. In other words, when it comes to building a culture of growth, we see that what faculty say and do in their classrooms is closely tied to what students think their instructors believe. So these findings provide initial, albeit correlational evidence that students may be drawing inferences about faculty mindset beliefs from their instructors' use of growth culture teaching practices. And finally, we want to look at how perceptions of faculty mindset, an indicator of cultures of growth or genius, might be connected to students' experience in the classroom. So consistent with the work we've done in four-year spaces, we found that students' perceptions of faculty growth mindset were strongly associated with their classroom experience. In particular, when students perceived that their instructor endorsed stronger growth mindset beliefs, they reported greater belonging and greater self-efficacy, that is, confidence in their own abilities. The perceived faculty mindset was also associated with less identity threat and stereotype threat, such that when students perceive that their instructor endorsed stronger growth mindset beliefs, they were less concerned about being viewed through the lens of negative stereotypes or underrepresentation of their particular identity group. So to summarize, and then I'll pause for a moment for questions, when faculty endorse stronger growth mindset beliefs, that is, they create a culture of growth, students appear to experience more belonging and self-confidence. They also experience less evaluative concern, imposter feelings, negative affect, and identity or stereotype threat. Students also exert more effort and maintain better attendance in their courses, report greater interest in the course and the field more broadly, and perform better in their courses. And what we see is that students may infer faculty growth mindset beliefs from faculty's use of growth culture teaching practices. So it's the task of faculty to ensure that what they say and do in the classroom is aligned with their growth mindset beliefs. So before I continue, I want to pause. Shahid, do we have any pressing questions?
Yeah, Kathy, we do have one question asking if there's data about what happens when students move from culture of growth to culture of genius. And I assume they mean where their environment is a culture of growth to a culture of genius. And what are some skills that we might be able to give students so that they can navigate that culture of genius?
Yes, that is one of my favorite questions. I've done a lot of work in the past to look at this idea of microcultures, right? We can look at this in any context, that there's a broader institutional mindset, culture, beliefs, and then within that broader institution, there are these microcultures of growth or cultures of genius. And what we find is that people react differently to these environments, right? So that students are very perceptive to the cultural beliefs of their instructor and usually adjust their behavior accordingly or report different levels of experience. One strong buffer for students personally to have is their own personal growth mindset. Students that endorse personally a growth mindset are better able to weather cultures of genius than those who don't, because they're able to kind of pull from their resources. But realistically, what is most valuable is to try to reach out to folks that have cultures of genius at an institutional level and try to, as colleagues, build each other up and create kind of more consistent cultures of growth across different contexts. Anything else? Happy to keep.
That's it for now, Kathy.
All
Thank
right,
you.
sounds great. Thank you. All right, so next I want to turn to the results of our work with CAT, right? That's why we're all here. So to give you a little overview of this project, so the goal of this engagement was to implement and test some professional development opportunities for community college math and English faculty to support them in building cultures of growth in their transfer level courses. So between spring 2022 and spring 2023, EA developed and evaluated 3 different professional development opportunities to support faculty in creating more equitable classroom learning environments. And so I'm just going to walk you through each of these briefly. The first one was a series of workshops. They were all virtual workshops. There were 3 of them, and the workshops covered topics like how to create course policies, syllabi, or assessment practices that reflect cultures of growth in your classroom. Each workshop was an hour and a half, and faculty were encouraged to attend any or all of the workshops. And in total, we had about 140 faculty from nearly 70 community college campuses participate in at least one workshop. The second opportunity we provided was an Equity Accelerator-led community of practice. So this COP consisted of 28 faculty from 8 teams across 6 campuses. And the faculty all met together as one big group virtually for 4 1.5-hour sessions over the course of the term to learn about and embed EA-developed evidence-based, equity-minded practices into their courses. They also learned how to lead their own COP because in the spring of 2023, we supported faculty in developing local communities of practice. And these local communities of practice were led by faculty who participated in the prior EA-led COP. And what they did was that they developed their own semester-long COP and worked relatively independently. We had 3 of the 8 teams from the fall build a local COP, and these COPs consisted of 28 faculty, 11 of whom were returning from the fall COP, and 17 who were new to the COP. So we were already getting a sense of the spread to the larger professional community. And so I'm sure many of you at this point are familiar with what a COP is. I know that Myra mentioned it previously, but for anyone for whom this might be new, a COP refers to a group of people who share a concern or a passion for something they do and learn how to do it better as they interact regularly. So each of these 3 PD opportunities was grounded in Equity Accelerator's evidence-based growth culture teaching practice library resources, which I'll provide you with more information before the end of this talk. And these resources have been shown to support faculty as they develop and refine their growth classroom cultures. Additionally, we provided resources to support teams in building and facilitating a community of practice grounded in EA's resources. And as a function of this engagement, these resources are all available at no cost to all of you. As part of their participation in all of these different opportunities, faculty completed surveys that assessed their mindset beliefs, their use of growth culture teaching practices, and other things. And for the students of the faculty who were in the EA-led COP, we distributed surveys to them and assessed their perceptions of their professor, their classroom experiences, and their anticipated grade in the course. So what I just want to highlight here is just that I'm happy to answer questions in more detail about these, but I'm going to save those for the end just so we can get to the exciting results. So I'm going to spend the next period of this presentation walking you through our 4 key findings, one by one. So the first of our findings is that when students perceive they are in a culture of growth, they have a better classroom experience and greater academic success. So these first set of findings focus on the surveys completed by the students of faculty in our EA-led COP. So as a reminder, students were surveyed about their classroom experience, their perceptions of their professors' mindset beliefs, and perceptions of their professors' use of growth culture teaching practices. And when I say classroom experience, what I mean is a measure that reflects a lot of what I've been talking to up until now, and it reflects measurements of students' belonging, their sense of self-efficacy, their trust in their instructor, things like that. So consistent with EA's prior work, students' perceptions of their professors' use of growth culture practices was positively correlated with their classroom experience. That is, across every growth culture practice we assessed, students who reported that their professor used that practice more also reported a more positive experience in the course. So students rated the full 12 practices, and I just have a portion here for illustrative purposes. So to give you as an example, when students indicated that their professor told them that they cared more about their students' success and learning, that student also tended to report a more positive classroom experiences. And something I want to highlight here is that for most practices, the correlations for students, specifically from traditionally disadvantaged demographic groups like Black, Latinx, Native American, and first-generation college students, were of a similar size or larger than these correlations, which were collapsing across all students. So this pattern is consistent with past work, and it makes sense because it suggests that the use of growth culture teaching practices may be particularly important in shaping the experiences of students from groups that are traditionally underserved in higher education. I want to take a moment to just highlight some student voice. We see that these positive experiences reflected in some open-ended responses from students. One student shared about her instructor. She was very clear of her expectations in the beginning of the course. She thoroughly explained every week the amount of work and hours we would need to put into our assignments. Even with the high workload, she encouraged us from the beginning that she has resources available and will always help if we need it. Another student with a different instructor shared, she's super approachable. She gives excellent tips and tricks when you're looking for feedback on your work, and she's very objective about your areas of improvement. She has a lot of empathy and understands when one is not able to turn in assignments and looks for ways we can make it work. So we wanted to understand the implications of these findings for student success. So to do so, we tested whether the positive classroom experiences that are linked to growth culture teaching practices were also associated with better course performance. And we would expect this relationship between experience and academic success because it's grounded in research that when students feel connected, valued, safe, and respected in their learning environments, they engage more academically and are more likely to seek support when they experience challenges, resulting in more learning and better performance. And what we found was very consistent with this literature. We found that students' classroom experience was strongly correlated with their anticipated course outcomes. That is, students who had more positive experience in their courses also anticipated receiving higher course grades. And so to understand the size of this impact, we compared the average anticipated grade of students who reported different degrees of positive experience in their course. So in this figure, we have anticipated grade on the y-axis, and we have students' classroom experience on the x-axis. So students who reported the least positive experience, which is this blue bar on the far left, they expected on average to earn about a B- in their course. But in contrast, students who reported the most positive experience, that far right yellow bar, in their course, they expected on average to earn an A-, which is a full letter grade higher. So our findings suggest that when students perceive their faculties create a culture of growth by using growth culture teaching practices, they report more positive classroom experience, which is associated with higher anticipated course grade. So next, we're going to stay with these EA-led COP faculty participants and their students, but now we'll dive deeper into faculty mindset. So building on our prior work, we compared faculty's self-reports of their own mindset to students' perceptions. And what we found is that students infer a classroom's culture of growth based on their professors' practices and not their professors' self-reported mindset. So when we measured faculty mindset, we found findings that looked a lot like some that I presented earlier in this talk. We found that California Community College faculty who engaged with our PD opportunities strongly endorsed growth mindset beliefs about student abilities. Across all of our different opportunities, we see really high levels of strong growth mindset endorsement. And we can see that there's a difference between that and what we see when we see students. we see with students. Instead, with students, we see that students' perceptions of faculty mindset beliefs were not associated with faculty's own self-reported beliefs. Rather, faculty reported stronger growth mindset beliefs than students perceived them to hold. So what we found is that we can look at this table. Let's stick with this first row for now. In the first column, we see that faculty on average self-reported their endorsement of growth mindset beliefs at about a 5.7 out of 6, right? Really high. Yet in the second column, we can see that students' average rating of faculty mindset was a 5.0 out of 6. Moreover, we tested the correlation between faculty and student mindset ratings, and the correlation was essentially 0 and very statistically not significant. And for illustrative purposes, we broke our analysis down to look at patterns specifically among students from structurally disadvantaged racial and ethnic groups, again, Black, Latinx, and Native American students, as well as first-generation students. And our results were generally the same. If anything, these faculty growth mindset ratings were ever so slightly lower for these groups. But taken together, consistent with our prior work, we find some misalignment between faculty self-reports and student assessments of faculty mindset. Even though the gap may not seem huge, this near zero correlation tells us that faculty and students' ratings are just not lining up. So how are students forming these impressions? Like past work, are these perceptions of growth culture practice use related to their global ratings of faculty mindset? Well, the short answer is yes. Across every practice, when students perceive that their professor used a growth culture practice more, they rated their professor as endorsing a stronger growth mindset beliefs. So again, here I'm including a condensed version of these correlations for illustrative purposes. But if we reflect on this work and prior findings, we see that these correlations are similar in size, not only to each other, but to our prior work. And we're getting a picture forming in our head about how students perceive mindset cultures in their classrooms. So students' perceptions of faculty mindset are not associated with faculty self-reported beliefs, but they are correlated with what faculty say and do in the classroom. And these findings suggest that students' classroom experiences and outcomes may be most positively impacted when faculty ensure that the growth mindset beliefs that they hold about student potential are being effectively communicated to students through the use of growth culture policies, practices, and norms. So we have evidence for two main things right now: that mindset culture in a classroom, whether it's a culture of growth or culture of genius, impacts students' experiences and outcomes in their class, and that the mindset culture is strongly associated with the perceptions of instructors' use of growth culture teaching practices. So the next natural question, of course, is how can we support faculty in creating cultures of growth in their classrooms? So that was one of the driving forces of this project. It was to create 3 professional development opportunities: the virtual workshops, the EA-led COP, and the locally led COPs. And what we found was that faculty participants in all phases of the project really liked these opportunities. They reported overwhelmingly positive experiences, that they enjoyed the opportunities and would recommend them to colleagues. We found that across the workshops and COPs, nearly all survey respondents, that is 97%, reported a positive experience. Now, it's important to highlight at this point that the vast majority of faculty participants reported being well-versed in growth mindset knowledge and already being committed to growth mindset values and beliefs. And still, faculty reported that the PD opportunities offered by EA were a valuable resource in building their cultures of growth. So in addition to assessing this overall positive experience, we wanted to assess faculty's intentions to use growth culture teaching practices in future teaching after learning about them in our PD. And what we found across our PD opportunities was that the results of our analysis indicate that each of EA's growth culture workshops and COPs led to greater intentions to use evidence-based growth culture practices above and beyond current use. So I want to walk you through the specific findings for each opportunity, as well as share quotes from participants to illustrate the learnings that they carried with them from these workshops and COPs. So for the virtual workshops, we found that across every practice rated in the first 2 workshops, most faculty, at least 75%, currently used or intended to adopt the growth culture practices in future teaching. And after workshop 3, 100% of faculty said they were already using or intended to use every practice. As one attendee shared, at the very beginning, I was thinking that this might not be a good fit for me because I have a very strong background in 2X ideas and already try to practice them in my own classes. But there were several things that were still new to me. I especially like the 2 misconception slides. I have noticed lately that sometimes I just push hard work and also need to be aware that even with hard work, failure and growth might still happen. For our EA-led COP, we found that before the COP, most faculty, at least 60%, reported using each of these growth culture practices, a number that jumped 23 percentage points to at least 83% of faculty after participation in our COP. And similar to this, the number of faculty already using every growth culture teaching practice we assessed, all 12 of them, rose from 36% before the COP to 56% after the COP, an increase of 20 percentage points. As one attendee shared, the support from other faculty and the activities reinforced the concepts in the preparatory readings. Gathering ideas about how other faculty approach similar challenges or the various ways that they creatively integrated the suggested practices was inspiring. Finally, for our locally led COPs, we found that the number of faculty in a locally led COP that reported using or intending to use each practice rose by 31 percentage points from at least 50 to at least 81% after participation in the COP. Moreover, whereas only 19% of faculty reported using all the practices before the COP, this number increased to 56% after the COP, an increase of nearly 40 percentage points. As one locally led COP participant shared, it's been great to have a dedicated time each week when we could share our experiences and challenges related to teaching, brainstorm solutions, discuss various high-impact teaching practices, and overall support each other in a positive and inclusive way. So the impact of these professional development opportunities on faculty's intentions to use growth culture teaching practices in their classroom is evident. But something I want to highlight here is that the increase reported by EA-led and locally led COP participants was really substantial and larger than the already high rates reported by workshop participants. We're talking here about well over 80% versus 75%. And so these findings, along with our open-ended responses by faculty, highlight that there's a potential increased benefit of recurring collaborative PD that supports faculty's use of these practices. All right, so in our last section of findings, I want to share about how colleges and colleagues play a critical role in supporting faculty as they sustain and scale their cultures of growth. So beyond merely enjoying the PD experience, we found that faculty from both the EA-led and locally led COPs expressed enthusiasm about sustaining their growth culture practices through continued COP engagement, as well as sharing the knowledge with colleagues. Nearly 50% of teams, as you know, from our EA-led COP formed locally led COPs, and 94% of faculty in the locally led COPs indicated a strong desire to continue this work in their local COP, grounded in EA's growth culture practice resources. Additionally, in their open-ended responses, faculty expressed enthusiasm about sustaining their growth culture practice through continued COP engagement, as well as sharing the knowledge with their colleagues. As one participant shared, I enjoyed sharing ideas and getting ideas and discussing challenges with other faculty from across the state and in different disciplines. I also built stronger relationships and got some amazing tools and ideas from my math friends at my institution. It is always nice to have a carved out space and time to talk, share, and grow together. Yet another reality that was highlighted by faculty was that while they consistently spoke to the benefits of COP participation and expressed their interest in continuing their COP work in the future, they also acknowledged barriers to sustaining the work over time. For those of you who already engage in COP work, many of these barriers will sound familiar. These include challenges such as competing professional demands on time, like other PD opportunities or professional service commitments, struggles with teaching workload and burnout, personal commitments, lack of compensation for additional workload required by a COP, and for some, a lack of support for equity-focused work in departments and among colleagues. And in our open-ended responses, faculty shared several approaches that colleges can take to support participation in communities of practice, and I'll return to those suggestions at the end of our talk. So just to review our findings, when students perceive they're in a culture of growth, we found that they have a better classroom experience and greater academic success. Our data showed that when students perceived their professors' use of growth culture teaching practices, like explicitly normalizing struggle or highlighting resources where students can go for help with course material, they also reported a more positive experience in their classroom and anticipated achieving a higher grade. We also found that students infer a classroom's culture of growth based on their professors' practices, not their professors' self-reported mindset. Specifically, our results revealed that students and faculty ratings of faculty mindset beliefs were completely uncorrelated. Instead, we found evidence that students' perceptions were tied to what their professors said and did in their classroom, that is, the extent to which they used growth culture teaching practices. Thus, to the extent that faculty are able to better align their teaching practices with their strong growth mindset beliefs, student and faculty ratings may come to align more. Third, we found that EA's evidence-based field-tested PD opportunities effectively supported faculty in creating cultures of growth. After all of our workshops and COPs, faculty showed high levels of intentions to engage with growth culture teaching practices above and beyond what they were already doing in their classrooms. Moreover, open-ended responses highlighted the particular value of working together in a COP structure to learn together and take their growth culture practices to the next level. And finally, colleges and colleagues play a critical role in supporting faculty as they sustain and scale their cultures of growth. It was clear to us that faculty valued the opportunities were provided them, and COP participants were eager to continue their COP work. Yet they also recognized challenges to this work, including competing professional demands on their time. So I want to just wrap up this presentation by briefly reflecting on a few key ways that faculty, departments, and administrators can build cultures of growth in classrooms. So first, for instructors looking to build cultures of growth in their classrooms, one strategy is you can use our evidence-based growth cultures classroom practices library. The URL is provided on the next slide, and we can provide that to you in our email. So in each of the resources in this library, you can learn more about each practice, how to incorporate it into your classroom, including examples you can use. These resources can be used individually or in a community of practice. And in addition to these resources, EA developed a suite of facilitation resources to support COP teams as they work together to create more equitable learning environments grounded in our library resources. These guides will help you answer questions like, what goes into creating a COP? Or how should we structure our collaboration? Or what do we do in sessions? So as I mentioned, all of these resources are available to you at no cost. You should expect to receive links from Myra after this webinar. Additionally, you can visit our website or email me, and all that information is on the next slide. But there are also steps that department chairs and administrators can take to support faculty in working together in COPs to build cultures of growth. For example, faculty indicated that COPs felt most sustainable and successful when they were provided with release time from other duties to compensate for the additional time and effort required of COP participation. Alternatively, some departments have found success by building COP work into existing departmental responsibilities like staff meetings or curriculum planning meetings. This is often a powerful way for department leaders to show support for the work and to provide faculty with the time to engage in it. To the extent possible, others expressed that their COP work felt most supported when they were compensated for the additional workload inherent to participation via stipends, grants, or fulfillment of professional development requirements, also additional budgets by the state to support this kind of work. Moreover, sharing existing funding opportunities and supporting faculty in seeking out such opportunities can go a long way in making these COP plans a reality. But the take-home message here is that no matter the specific approach, to best support faculty participation in communities of practice, colleges should consider taking proactive steps, whether they be carving out protected time or building in reward structures that encourage sustained engagement with this COP work. All right, thank you. Again, I'm here to take questions. If you have any questions that we don't get to, or you're interested in future professional development opportunities, you can email me at kathy@accelerateequity.org. We also have a newsletter you can subscribe to. The URL is here, and that provides you with information about what we're doing and opportunities as they emerge. We also have our Growth Culture Classroom Practices Library, which you can access through our website. You can navigate to it, or I also have the URL here, and you can expect a lot of this information provided by Myra in her follow-up email after this webinar.
Kathy, I've also posted the links to those resources in the chat, and
Thank you.
there are no questions in the Q&A, but I would
Yeah.
invite anybody to type
Yeah.
in there if they would like to.
Sometimes we just need a moment to process. I see some questions in the chat that folks are asking about different aspects of measurement, like where they can access the full list of growth culture teaching practice items. The best way to do that is to just send me an email, because I'll be able to point you exactly where you need to go to get that information. So it's easy, Kathy@accelerateequity.org. You want to go ahead and cover your stuff, Myra, and then people can
Sure.
ask
Do I
questions.
just advance to the last slide?
It's not the last slide. There we go. There we go.
Okay. So I want to just stop and say thank you so much for a information-packed presentation. That was amazing. I think as a math faculty at a community college, I am always wondering what I can do in my classroom. And the second thing I'm always wondering is what evidence is there that the things that I'm being asked to try actually work? So I think that both of those questions are so beautifully answered in the research presented here and the very concrete set of resources. I think finally, many of us have tried to lead or do continue to lead professional development at our colleges. And it can sometimes be difficult to do that because we're with colleagues who might not view us as a particular expert in a particular area. So it was beautiful to see that even when faculty were leading their own communities of practice using these facilitation guides, that they had the same kinds of success as when the communities of practice were led by an expert in this area provided by Equity Accelerator. So I think this kind of research gives me hope because it's not only what I can do, it's how I know it works, and it's what support I can use as a facilitator when I'm working with my colleagues. This presentation and its recording, the slides, the report, the URLs that were shared here will all be available on the California Acceleration Project website at accelerationproject.org by about midweek next week. We also have one more webinar in our fall series, which is on October 27th. And if you haven't registered for that webinar, you can sign up under events on our website. So with that, I want to thank Equity Accelerator and Kathy Emerson in particular for an amazing learning opportunity today. And we hope to see you on the 27th. Thank you.